So have England selected enough firepower to take down the All Blacks? Hi guys, welcome back. Let's get stuck into these selections for England versus New Zealand. It's going to be a really interesting game. England, a good performance against Japan. They're going to have to step it up against a New Zealand team that came back and beat Scotland after Scotland had a bit of a purple patch there. So let's get into the team. Front row wise, the change some of you guys wanted was Jamie George in at hooker. Cowan Dickey, very enthusiastic last week, but you guys definitely did want George's set piece prowess in there. But Cowan Dickey gets the nod. It's a stable front row. And the good news is Sinclair has played himself into form. And with Stewart on the bench, I think that is a much stronger setup at tight head. When Genge goes off and Mako comes on, that does weaken it a bit, I think. Definitely a step down from Genge to Mako. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. In the second row, quite good news, I think. Atoje is back in there after being at 6 for a while. I think he's definitely more suited to it. Him and Johnny Hill, the best second rows we have. And on the bench, Ribbons, I really think he could be a very good backup second row. I think he's mature. He's definitely ready for the international scene. My interview with Sam Simmons last week after the game against Japan, I said he looked really fresh. He agreed. He had a great game. And I'm glad he's still in the setup there at 6 this time, though. That's where he finished the Japan game. So good reward for him. I would have liked to see him at 8. They've got Billy back in at 8 to get them over the gain line, so they say, which is fine. But how does he really match up to Ardie Surveyor? Not particularly favourably. Is he going to be making those game-breaking moments? I don't know, but he could be solid. Curry at 7, looks fit, tackles hard, real workhorse. If England do want a more attacking 7, as many of you guys have said, Ben Earl's absolutely on fire and he's not even in the squad. So England pretty well stacked at open side at the moment. Some good news, Jack Van Poortvliet keeps his place at 9. That's great. I thought for this big game maybe Eddie Jones would have gone back to Youngs. He hasn't. If he gets a good game here, could he be getting a first choice spot at scrum half? I think that would be good. Staying with Smith and Farrell, this is what Jones wants to work with. I mean, does it work? I mean, sure, they take it in turns, they can move the ball around, but of course none of them have that game-breaking running game, that big power game, so it does put a lot of pressure on the rest of the backs. Smith just needs to get that balance between creative and risky. Sometimes he goes over the top. He just needs to tone it down and pick his times to do the audacious stuff. Farrell at 12. Now, I did say, gave him credit last week. I don't think he could have performed much better. He was absolutely all over the place. But he's at 10 playing 12. And of course, it puts a lot of onus on Tuolangi at 13. Who's the only real line-breaking threat in the back line, unless you can bring Stewart in effectively. So a lot of pressure on him. He looks sharp, he looks fit for now. Let's see how it goes. On the wings, well, we've got Noel and May, who both work their socks off. I do like them, but are they as good as they used to be a few years ago? Probably not. And how do they stack up against the world's best? Probably not the highest. So like them, they're going to work hard, but have they quite got the firepower there? In the back three was Stewart, who got a lot of good attacking opportunities against Japan. That was good to see. He's probably going to have a bit more defensive work to do against New Zealand, so we'll see if he gets that freedom again. Like I said, front rows we mentioned a bit more solid. Ribbons I like coming on, and I like Jack Willis coming on. He's a class act, got to be close to starting. So yeah, looking quite good there, I think, in the back row. Fairly happy, fairly solid. I don't think it's particularly massively explosive compared to New Zealand. We got Youngs, who's probably the least impactful 9 coming off the bench. Porter, who's solid, but I just worry his ceiling isn't quite high enough. Slay looks like he's covering fullback. Could be a good World Cup option, so I don't think that's a bad idea. Now overall, it's a pretty good team, but I just think it lacks a little bit of star power, a little bit of speed and power that could be the difference against a class act like New Zealand. Let's have a look at this New Zealand side. Ethan de Groot and Lomax start as the props, no massive surprise there. Taylor, though, retains his spot. I thought Takiaho would be starting. I just prefer him as a player, but goodness me, him coming off the bench is pretty scary. So that's a good 1-2 at hooker. Taylor's played himself into form, so that's good news. Now in the second row, you guys called it. I thought Retallick might be on the bench, but then you said, look, it's going to be his 100th cap. He's going to start. So he is. I don't know if he'll last the whole game. He's alongside his old mate Whitelock there at captain. They moved Scott Barrett to 6, which is pretty tough on Frizzell, but Scott Barrett is pretty much a fixture in the team now. So 2 big 6s in the squad. Papali'i continues at 7, continues to impress. After the tour, when Kane's back, I hope Papali'i's done enough to retain his number 1 choice because I really like him. And then the class act Ardy Surveyor at 8, who hasn't even made World Player of the Year shortlist. That's surely a mistake. Okay, into the back. Smith and Mwanga, obviously their first choice, 9 and 10 now. That's super clear. Geordie Barrett really transforms the back line, I think, at 12, because he's got the physical attributes to hit the line hard and the skills and the kicking. Just think he makes a big difference. Alongside the speedster, Rico Ioane. I thought maybe they might go for Leonard Brown, but he's on the bench. In the backs, they're sticking with Clark and Talea. Both very good players. Clark a big threat, but will England target him in defence maybe? Try and turn him a bit, make him biting in defence? We will see. Then we've got at fullback Beauden Barrett, who looks like this is his permanent home now, covering 10 rather than a competitor at 10. On the bench, like I said, the powerful Takiahu, Baron Laulala, Frizzell, a good powerful 6 to come on, and a really speedy 8 to come on Satusu, just to add even more pace into their back row if they need it. That's pretty scary. Perinaro rejoins the battle for the second choice scrum half, still going strong. Havili can play a bit of a multi-role replacement, which might be his best kind of role in the actual squad overall, covering 10, covering centres, even back 3, and Leonard Brown covering the centres probably. So on paper, I would say predict a New Zealand win. They just look like they've got a bit more X factor than England, although if England can continue with their team development and their shape improving from Japan, they could give them a run for their money. So I'd probably just tip New Zealand for this game. Let me know what you think of that and also the selections.